Good afternoon. The Committee of the Whole is still on recess until we reach sufficient number to reach quorum. All right, thank you.
Okay, the Committee of the Whole has reconvened. We are now on Chapter 5, Executive Branch. The First Amendment is from Senator Perez, and this is to line 1 through 27 and 1 through 2 of pages 60 and 61.
Hold on, Mr. Chair.
Madam Speaker?
Yes, if we could just go through the budget by agency, could we please?
We are on Chapter 5, Executive Branch. Chapter 5, Executive Branch. 47. There's a motion to go agency by agency. Any objections to the motion? No objections, motion carries. We're in Chapter 5, Executive Branch. First agency is the Office of the Governor. Okay, we are on page 48. Okay, we are on page 48. Any questions on page 48? Any questions or comments on Office of Imaga Hagen Guahan? Senator Brown.
I just wanted to inquire from the Office of Budget. It was mentioned earlier by Mr. Guerrero that the executive branch is not being funded anything beyond this last fiscal year. Is the office budget for the governor consistent with last year's budget? I just wanted to ask the Budget Office that question, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry, could you repeat the question one more time?
I wanted to inquire if the amounts that are being appropriated to the governor's office in this budget consistent with last year's appropriation. Is it the same? Because they mentioned earlier there's been no increase to the executive budget.
Okay. Mr. Guerrero?
Yes, Senator. The amount that they're asking this year is kind of like status quo from last year's budget.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Guerrero. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Anyone else on this section of the budget? This is the Office of the Governor. Anyone else? Any questions or comments on this? Okay, no questions on page 48. We'll move now to page 49. 49 is Commission on Decolonization. Any questions or comments on the Commission on Decolonization? Questions or comments on Commission of Decolonization?
Mr. Chair.
Senator
OFB
Adam?
Thank you. OFB and the Commission on Decolonization, do you have the balance of what they have from last, did they report the balance from their commission? So, was any funds expended last year for advertising or public awareness and the efforts for the three,
Are you referring to FY20?
no, 21, I'm sorry, this year.
As you can see, we have like maybe a month and a half left of appropriations to be beyond the fiscal year. I don't know if they have, and we can find out, but right now, whether or not they expended for those particular items you mentioned, I'm not too sure.
Okay, that's okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Ada. Anyone else on Commission on Decolonization? If not, Commission on Decolonization is closed. Guam Ancestral Lands Commission, that's page 51. Guam Ancestral Lands Commission. Anyone on the Guam Ancestral Lands Commission? Speaker Talahi, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could just get OFB to confirm that. So this is exactly the same as FY21. Does that mean that there are no increments there or anything else that needs to be funded in addition? Or that this is all that they are tracking? They're tracking the exact same amount as last year in this special fund?
Yes, Senator, to answer your question, the level that we're proposing in the bill basically is the same level reflected in the governor's executive budget request.
But is this what the fund is tracking?
Let me verify real quick. It is the level that the fund is tracking, Senator.
Thank you. That's it, Mr. Chair. Yes, thank you.
Okay, anyone else on Guam Ancestral Lands Commission? If not, Guam Ancestral Lands Commission closed. Guam Office of Veterans Affairs. Speaker Talahi.
All right, just want to confirm. So this is an increase from 581,692 last year to 968,605 this year. This is all from the general fund. I'm glad to see it at the Office of Veterans Affairs. I want to confirm that my understanding is that this money is going to help fill vacancies and buy cemetery equipment. Is that your understanding as well?
That is correct, Senator.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Speaker Talahi. Anyone else on the Guam Office of Veterans Affairs? If not, Veterans Affairs is closed. Bureau of Budget and Management Research. page 53. Anyone on Bureau of Budget and Management Research, page 53. Senator Nelson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Steve, what is the indirect cost from?
Indirect cost, Senator, is generated by programs that are eligible for administrative costs, which is shared by DOA, Department of Administration, and the Bureau of Budget.
And how many programs is that?
When you say how many programs,
Yes, you said, yeah. Is this from a federal grant too?
yes, it is.
Okay. So is it just one program?
That
It's like
I'm not-
DOE, right? They have consolidated grants and then they get indirect cost from the consolidated grants.
Yes.
So what is this?
I'm
one?
not too sure if it's just one program or multiple programs. Senator, just to expand more on my answer regarding the funding, these are from multiple programs that they apply the indirect costs that are eligible to be applied to these federal programs. Because my understanding, the reason why it goes to Department of Administration, Bureau of Budget, and the Governor's Office is because those are the three agencies that give direct supervision and are responsible for these grants.
Oh, okay. And then how many vacancies are funded in this budget for BBMR?
Give me a second, I'll find out.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Senator Talahi,
We're on page 72, we're on page 52, right?
53, Bureau of Budget and
My
Management
record
Research.
is showing like, page 52 is the Veterans Affairs Office.
Yes, we just closed that, the Veterans Affairs.
Oh, you closed that already?
Yes.
Okay, okay, thank you.
We are now on Bureau of Budget and Management Research.
No, I just wanted to report that the increase was like 400,000 compared to fiscal year '22.
Yeah, Senator Tello, to answer your question, in the staffing panel, there's only one vacant positions in the Bureau of Budget.
Thank you.
Anyone else on Bureau of Budget and Management Research? If not, BBMR is closed. Civil Service Commission, page 54, Civil Service Commission. Anyone on Civil Service Commission? Senator Nelson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to inquire if CSC received an increase in their funding from FY21.
Yes, Senator, did good. They have a slight increase over FY21 for about 103,000, which is to cover contractual officer supplies and board stipends.
Did they receive any money from the CARES Act, or are they anticipating to receive any money from the ARP?
That again, Senator, is a question that, I'm not quite too sure what the amounts are being allocated out of the ARP money.
Okay. And no CARES money? They didn't receive CARES money?
At this point, Senator, I can't confirm whether or not these departments are receiving specific amounts of monies coming from the CARE other than what the original plan said on the allocation. Now, whether or not those amounts and that allocation that was provided, I believe sometimes last year, came to fruition, I don't know.
So this 103,000 increase, is that for FY22 supplies to pay back, or is this for job positions?
It's for FY22 operations.
Operations. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I support the increase, and I want to thank the CSC for all the work that they do, especially when we call on them and we ask for their assistance. They're always timely in their response. So thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Nelson. Anyone else on Civil Service Commission? If not, Civil Service Commission is closed. Department of Administration, page 55. Department of Administration, page 55. Anyone? Senator Duenas.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to direct this to OFB. I see an appropriation here from the Limited Gaming Fund, Department of Administration, and I don't understand why. Maybe it was something that was done in a previous budget to depart from the intent and how the law was passed for the Limited Gaming Fund. So I'd like to know why that amount is here and not where it's supposed to be, which is the Mayor's Council, Department of Education, or Parks and Recreation.
If you look at the enabling legislation of the Limited Gaming Fund, there's a provision there that allows 5% for administrative provision oversight. So since Department of Administration basically is the agency responsible for all the accounting of all government accounts, that's why that amount is there.
Okay, Steve, thank you for the clarification. I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't depleting revenues from what was intended, but I do understand administrative costs, and thank you for the clarification. Sijus Masi.
Thank you, Senator Duenas. Anyone else on the Department of Administration? Speaker Terlahi, you're recognized.
Yes, I guess I'd like OFB to flush this out a little bit. So it looks to me like Department of Administration is receiving over $1 million, maybe $1.3 million increase in their budget. And it looks like if you, there's a decrease in the amount that's appropriated to DOA for paying orders of the court, like child custody orders. There is a very slight increase for the residential care, so that's almost status quo, but there's a significant decrease, $100,000 decrease. It's only a small fund already. It's a $250,000 governmental claims, Guam Claims Fund, decrease from 250 to 150. And so I want to ask about that. That seems too small to take care of claims for a year. They could verify. But other than that, yeah, $1 million increase for DOA. If you could just provide the details of that.
Absolutely. Okay, the total increase in the bottom line between FY21-22 is 1.4 million. The 1.4 million is for the following: 200,000 for the shredding contract, 190,000 for to fund the position of buyers down at GSA, 200,000 for the Aon insurance study, 700,000 shortfall for FY21.
What does that mean? Shortfall.
This one, I believe, is to Let me verify. I want to make sure that what I'm reading is correct.
And also the Aon study, what are
Yeah.
they studying?
That's the amount that was requested to fund the insurance study, I guess.
Which one? For the health,
The government of Guam
insurance?
Health Insurance.
so that's the contract with Aon?
That's the amount that the Department of Administration is requesting to do
Okay.
that study.
Well, I'm glad to hear about the buyers at GSA, but yeah, please
Yes.
proceed.
And then there's 126,000 increase in rent. You also have on the miscellaneous you were referring to as on the child support study. It decreased by 300,000 because what we did is we just matched the governor's request. This is the level that the governor was asking for in the executive budget. On the residential treatment fund, we increased by 313 as this is the amount that I believe Director Burns was requesting during the budget hearings that they needed, and that was basically, I believe, based on trends that was the expenditure level for the last several years. The government claims fund again was decreased by 100,000 at the request of the governor to the executive budget.
Do you know what the government claims fund spent last year?
If I'm not mistaken, and I may stand corrected, I think the government claim fund was like not even 100,000, but I'll check. It was a low amount.
It was 250.
The total expenditure?
Oh, no, the expenditure, I don't know. So
Yeah.
you think it was 100,000 out of the government
Yeah,
claim?
if you're asking, yeah, I thought the question was how much they
Yes,
spent. Yes,
yes.
I believe it's less than 100,000. So that's why I think the governor is asking for a lower amount.
Okay, if that's correct, then,
But I will verify that, but if I'm not mistaken, that's what I saw in the report.
Can we please have that checked? It's very important considering.
Yes, I will
Yeah.
get the details of this breakdown to you folks. Let me check on the 700,000 for prior year and the 100,000 for the
Yeah, the only way I'm bringing
Government's
this up,
claim.
Mr. Chair, is because last year we passed a bill that increased the Guam Claims Act from 250 to 500,000. So right now, shorting it 150, I'd really like to know why, when there are claims that are being brought to the government of Guam, usually monthly. Okay, thanks.
Okay, let's take a moment's recess so that Mr. Guerrero can get the correct information to you all. Okay, we're back from recess. Mr. Guerrero?
Okay, Senator Talahi, when you were regarding the 700,000 shortfall, that 700,000 shortfall actually it comprises of 313,699 for the residential treatment fund and the 300,000 for the street light, public street light. That's where the 700,000 is representing. It's not a shortfall. What it is, it's the level that Department of Administration is requesting to bring up the appropriation to match the current expenditures in the program. And for the government's claim fund, what was spent in 2020 was $57,747, and what we're tracking now in FY21 is $63,000.
Thank you. The Department of Education leases for Pt.1 and the GDOE office buildings were also moved to this section. I don't see a total, but are they the same amount as before? Are any changes in these? These are now moved to DOA instead of GDOE.
The bottom line, Senator, is the same. It's just there's a difference in between both of them. The difference of changes what we paid out in 21 and what we're going to pay out in 22, but it's the same amount on the bottom line.
Okay, and then just one more question. On the WICHI, it's just a small amount, 78,000. This is the same as last year, but I thought that there was something that happened, maybe if my colleague would yield, on the WICHI, that it was, this is the Western Interstate Commission for Higher Education, that they had decreased their fees for Guam. Is that right?
Sorry, Madam Speaker, your question is for?
I thought that, I just want to confirm whether WICHI had decreased their fees for Guam. Because this is for fees or dues.
I'm sorry, who are you posing the question to?
OFB knows the answer, otherwise if my
Okay.
colleague would yield.
You're running the WICHI program. Is there any changes in that? Yes, Senator, the amount that's reflected there is basically what was requested in the executive budget. To date, I'm not aware of any changes being made to that.
All right, I guess my colleague clarified that, yes, they've decreased their dues that are due from Guam, but they're going to keep this appropriation and try to use it for something else later.
Okay, Madam Speaker, any more questions?
No, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I still have the question asking about the Guam Claims Act, the balance. Because right now, what I have in front of me, Mr. Chair, is basically in 2017, they spent about 86% of the amount appropriated, which was $250,000. That was appropriated actually in 2018, and in 2019, about 41.81% of the 250 appropriated was spent. So that was only in 2018 that I have for now, but I don't have the information in 2020, and if there was any funding that was 2021. And the reason why I bring this up, Mr. Chair, is because, you know, the less amount we put in this Guam Claims Act, people who are justly deserved and being rewarded from a claim, justly so, would have to wait if there's not enough funding in there, because we fund this Claims Act once a year. And we don't put the appropriated amount, especially now that we increased it from a $250,000 to $500,000 for the Guam Claims Act, and not having the money there, it just takes longer to pay those who need the funding. So my question again was, what's in the balance currently right now in the Guam Claims Act, and what have we paid out in 2020 and 21?
Well, assuming that in FY21, if the appropriation is $250,000, and to date, minding the fiscal year is not over, that they have spent up to 63, then I believe the difference will be have a balance of 187,000 to date. Now, if you're talking about prior year, I believe the appropriation was also 250,000. So if you take the 250,000, let me see, 250,000, subtract the 57,794. You get a balance of about 97,000 from FY20 appropriation.
Steve, that doesn't account for those who are standing by waiting to get their claims paid. How many claims have been at the Attorney General's office waiting to get paid? You know, there's still cases going on currently on claims, and if we know how many cases that are still pending, would give us a better estimate on how much money that should be in that funding. If anything, you know, every year we've appropriated what the limit of liability was for the Guam Claims Act, which is 250. But now that we increased it to 500,000, then we should follow that same suit and continue on with it. So I'm just wondering if you had the opportunity to find how many claims are pending as well.
As far if you're asking if there's any outstanding encumbrances against the remaining balance for FY20, that I don't know. We can check into it. The only thing is that the 192 is basically what the fund balance is at the end of the fiscal year. We need to probably go back and check whether or not there's any outstanding liabilities being charged to the account.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Mr. Chair, I'd like to bookmark this area here to go back so that we can get that kind of information. And right now, I think the person to ask for would be the Office of the Attorney General, which oversees this area, if we can get them on the phone and find out.
Okay, so there's a bookmark on which section?
On page 56, Mr. Chair, on line 13.
Okay, there's a bookmark on page 56, line 30. 13.
Line 13, 1-3. Thank you.
Sorry. Bookmark, page 56, line 13. Government Claims Fund. Okay, anyone else on Department of Administration? Okay, if there's no one else on the Department of Administration, DOA is closed. Let me correct that. DOA is closed except for the bookmark. All right, we are now on page 60, Department of Revenue and Taxation, and there is an amendment. This is the first amendment we have, and this amendment is proffered by Senator Perez. It is to line 1 through 27 and 1 through 2, pages 60 and 61. Senator Perez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what this amendment does, it restores the funds that are received pursuant to Chapter 103, Title 11, Section 103.120. It's the funds that comprise of licensing fees from insurance licensing, banking, and any enforcement fines that have been issued in their respective industries. And these fees are collected pursuant to this law. And so what this fund would be used for, so basically it's restoring the fund to that particular, it restores the money back to its fund where it's been authorized to collect. So what this fund would do, it would be used for researching complaints from consumers, conducting market examinations, enforcing compliance with foreign exchange businesses, to name just a few. And this fund could be further used to address issues of regulating money transmitters, as well as provide more training of its examiners to make sure that people's interests are protected within these industries. So it's really about restoring the funds back to the Banking and Insurance Board, which can then use to regulate and fulfill its mandates particularly now that we've confirmed the commissioner, the Banking and Insurance Commissioner, to give it more functionality within DRT. And so what this does, so it's $478,857 have been collected. And so that would do is basically would put it back into the fund for these purposes. So I asked my colleagues for their support to make sure that this part of DRT has the necessary funds to carry out this mandate.
Thank you, Senator Perez. Anyone on the Perez amendment? Anyone on the Perez amendment? Senator Perez? If no one on the Perez amendment, Senator Perez, you may close.
I just asked for my colleagues' support. Thank you.
Okay, any objection to the Perez amendment? Seeing none, motion carries. We are now on an amendment by Senator Nelson to lines 12 through 16 of page 60.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to request that this amendment be tabled. Not everyone is here to vote on the amendment, so I'd just like to table it until we can bookmark this and get back.
Okay, we will bookmark page 60 specifically for the Nelson amendment. Speaker Chalahi, you're recognized.
Thank you. Could OFB just tell us again where this Better Public Service Fund comes from? Is this, it says that's supposed to go for tax collection, and then there's a tax collection enhancement fund.
If you recall, under the general fund revenue categories, 10% of the license fees and permits is set aside for this, and the other one,
Okay.
then 10% under the license under the Guam Highway Fund.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. There's the next amendment. The author of the amendment is not present. Do I hear a motion to bookmark this amendment? This would be to line 27, page 63.
Who's the author? Oh, sorry.
Selena, can you bookmark it?
Can we please, Mr. Chair, also bookmark this section?
Thank you, Senator. We will bookmark line 27, we'll bookmark page 63 specifically for this amendment to line 27. We now have, the next amendment is to one moment. Okay, I apologize. I got a little bit carried away, and we actually completed Department of Revenue and Taxation except for the bookmark. Senator Perez?
Can we also bookmark 60, can we bookmark the chapter? I have other amendments. Can we bookmark the chapter?
Revenue and Tax?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So we'll bookmark the Department of Revenue and Taxation. We are now on Department of Public Works, DPW. Okay, colleagues, I have a correction. I apologize, I got a little thrown off by the amendments. We've completed DRT except for the bookmark. We've actually bookmarked DRT. Now we are on Bureau of Statistics and Plans, page 62. Anyone on BSP? Page 62, Bureau of Statistics and Plans. That's after. Anyone on Bureau of Statistics and Plans? Page 62, BSP. If not, we'll move on. BSP is closed. We're now on DPW, page 63. Anyone on DPW?
Mr. Chair, I have an amendment pending, but I don't want to call a break. If there's no other amendments for DPW, can we just bookmark this as well so I can send the amendment forward?
Sure, we'll bookmark DPW. Senator Brown, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I did want to ask a question with regards to the Guam Highway Fund, if I can. From the budget office there, I see we're putting 2.2 million aside for for our village roads, but then it goes on to say that the remainder of the fund is going to be, I guess, at the end of next month. Do we have a general idea what's remaining in the highway fund that would provide additional road paving? Because, 2.2 million is not a lot. I mean, it's going to pave a few miles, maybe 2.5 miles of road. So do we have a general idea what may be remaining at the end of next month for additional funds for DPW to do village road resurfacing or road repairs?
Yes, Senator Brown, when we met with the Director of Public Works during our budget meetings in my office, they express the need and the will to continue and to expand and to try to address some of the highways and roads out there that typically were was kind of like being oversaw and maintained by the village maintenance workers. Mm-hmm. And I guess in consultation with Angel Sablan at the mayor's office and President Ali from PD, they concluded that they would forego taking over that responsibility of maintaining those roads that the mayors are currently overseeing and maintaining, and passing it on to Public Works. Now, Public Works was very much willing to do it. They didn't give us any specific breakdown or list of what roads they're going to maintain or fix, but between the two entities, they were willing and able to go ahead and do that transfer of authority and maintenance currently being done by the mayor's office.
If I can clarify, in the past, weren't the mayors provided additional funding to address some minor road repairs in the village?
No, they weren't provided additional
They've
funding.
never been provided any funding from any other source to do minor, pothole repairs and things of that nature?
Other than getting funding from the Guam Highway Fund like they did this year, I don't believe that we're given any other funding for that.
Okay, so you're saying they transferred the responsibilities back to DPW for secondary roads, but DPW has no additional resources? Do they have any additional resources besides what's here, this 2.5? And then if you can give us an indication of what perhaps may be the remaining amount of funds in there after next month, to give us an idea of exactly how much money that we're putting into the roadways. And Mr. Chairman, I bring this up because while we have the funding source that goes into the Guam Highway Fund to address road maintenance and repairs, I think our people in our community will probably concur every day they get on the road. There's very little maintenance work in general that's occurring. Any major construction is being paid for courtesy of Uncle Sam through the Federal Highway Fund on routed roads. Anytime there's damage to the roadway, anytime we damage a railing, a sign gets run over, whatever the case may be, there's almost no repairs being made to correct. And unfortunately, in some cases, particularly with regards to our railings, we might be creating an even more dangerous situation because when these railings are hit, I mean, they end up becoming very sharp and cutting. And certainly if anyone walks by or runs into it again, instead of protecting our people, it might do more damage because there's literally no repairs being done as these incidences happen. So I just want to get an idea of what are we talking about? Because when you really get right down to it, even though a certain percentage, every time we buy gas and put it in our car is supposed to go into this fund to address highway maintenance and repair, very little. I mean, a couple $1 million is really not much of that overall fund that's actually going into the maintenance and repair of the roadways. So I don't want to belabor it with you, Mr. Guerrero, because I know it's not of your choosing. But can you give us an idea of what perhaps may be remaining in the highway fund after next month, just so we can have an idea of how little we are actually investing in roadway repairs and maintenance on Guam?
Senator, I agree with you 100% in your assessment on the conditions and the ability of the government to perform these tasks and services when needed. My understanding in our conversation with the Mayor's Council and with DPW was that the Mayor's Council, I believe by next year, they're willing to forgo some of their staff that basically are providing this type of work on the mayor's level, and to move some of their personnel to Public Works to augment Public Works' desire to take on additional responsibilities and or at least improve the condition and the services to maintain these roads out there. The plan actually was supposed to be implemented this year, but we thought that the time frame was too short, and we wanted to give at least these employees that may be affected time to adjust and maybe, be better prepared should in the event they had to be transferred over to Public Works.
I'm sorry. What do we mean by transferred? The last time I checked, staff from the mayor's office, like the legislature, unclassified employees. So what exactly are we talking about?
What it was just a conversation that we were having on how to use current manpower levels that's within the government right now. So these people, I understand they are unclassified people over the mayor's offices, but if these people, at least maybe through an interim, sort of like a phase-out period for them over at the mayor's office, would be available, at least currently, for I don't know how long, maybe 1 month, 2 months, 1 year, that they would work under Public Works, and then maybe at a certain point, Public Works would have the ability to go out and actually hire maybe permanent staff.
Are these employees still going to be funded by the respective mayors during this transition period? Because again, I would want to ensure that if we are doing classified hiring in the government of Guam, that these positions are announced, and certainly everyone and anyone who's qualified and interested has the opportunity to apply.
All these employees under the mayor's council right now are still being funded in FY2022.
And so if this plan were to be formalized, they would be loaned to DPW to assist in road maintenance?
Point
I
of
don't.
information, Mr. Chair.
Senator Nelson, you have a point of information?
I don't think that that's a correct statement. From our roundtable hearing, they're contracting out their roadway work. They're not hiring more employees to fix the roadway.
Senator Nelson, I was under the impression exactly that's what the funds were being used, to contract the
To
work out.
contract, yeah,
Yes.
because, yeah, and if they're trying to make a deal like that, that is really unethical to promise for us to move highway fund money, yeah, over for that purpose to yeah, it has to go through the proper, but I know for a fact that we had a roundtable last week and we're having one again tomorrow on the roadways, and they are contracting that work out.
And you're correct, Senator. And like I said, when we went back to kind of determine what the cost would be and what the funding level for the agencies, we found out that the appropriations made to the mayor's office, which I thought was for maintenance of the roads and streets within the respective villages, mostly was used for personnel, for the mayors. Absolutely, yes. Now, Senator, I don't know if they're going to contract it out, but according to the Director of Public Works, he's going to use that money to maintain the roads. What mechanism and how he goes through that, I don't know. But he was just asking for the funding to maintain those roads. We did it. We gave it to him. Now, whether or not he contracts it out or his people internally does it, that's up to him.
Mr. Guerrero, again, I don't expect you to carry the burden of the respective decisions that may or may not be made by the mayors or the Director of Public Works, so we can move on from that. But I just want to, again, go back to my original question. Could you have a general idea of how much additional money may be available after next month in the Highway Fund that can add to this $2.25 million here for road maintenance for this upcoming fiscal year?
From the Guam Highway Fund.
Yes. From the Guam Highway Fund. Because I don't believe we have any other source of funding for our secondary roads, which are not covered by federal funds.
Point of information, Mr. Chair.
Senator Nelson, you're recognized.
The amendment that we are submitting is to prioritize the Guam Highway Fund money for the sole purpose of contractual road improvements and for bike lanes. And so just to ensure that it does not go to additional personnel costs to hire new people, that we're obligating this for contractual work.
Thank you, Senator Nelson. Senator Brown?
Sure, I just wanted,
yeah.
Mr. Guerrero can let us know what I understand, I mean, until all the books are closed, but just to give us a general idea of how much money we may have available in addition to this $2.25 million.
Currently, Senator, as of the July 31st CER report, we are tracking actually 2.9 million below projected levels for FY21.
Wow, so we're getting less money?
We're collecting less money.
Wow, that's a concern. Do we know for sure at least that this 2.25 million is available? Is it available or we don't know?
As at this point right now, the way that I believe Bureau of Budget operates is that and Department of Administration, they monitor these funds, the collection of these special revenues, and they will only release what is collected to date.
So are we tracking, is it, you believe, also result just less people driving on the roads buying gas last year? What do we have any idea what we attribute the decrease to?
Well, yeah, I guess last year and this year probably can share the same concerns because, things were closed, less people on the roads, less people buying gas, all those types of things. So it's all contributing to the reduction in revenues. But we hope that, as things get better, the numbers and the expected revenues that we anticipate to collect will get at least up to projected levels. But right now, we are tracking, like I said, 2.9 million less than what we projected for the year.
So this could be another area federal funds could be used to offset for adverse impact from the COVID.
Oh, if
In
the
addition
funds,
to the customs and the TAF funds.
well, the funds, if the ARP funds are used or can be used to offset lost revenues, then I believe this will
This would
qualify.
be a fund, okay. I
Absolutely.
appreciate it because I was not aware, Ms. Guerrero, that
Okay.
the fund was decreasing by that amount. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Anyone else on DPW? Speaker Chalahi?
I'm sorry, but you lost me there. Can you please confirm? I can see from FY21, the total appropriation has increased this year, right? It looks like by $1 million. Are you saying this money came from the mayors?
No, Senator. What we're saying is that we took a portion of the Guam Highway Fund that was appropriated to the mayors in FY21, which I believe was around $4 million, and the intent was to move that money in '22 to Public Works. But because we agreed we couldn't just do it in such a short time frame, what we did is we went ahead and funded those positions under the mayor, 50% from the Guam Highway and 50% from the general fund. Remember, the Guam Highway was in the audit cited that
Yes.
these monies were not supposed to be used that way, and it was supposed to be strictly for highway. So we wanted to revert all the Guam Highway funds back to Public Works. But because we didn't have the whole amount available to us to move the whole $4 million, we just decided to do 50% this year, and hopefully next year we can just do the whole amount. But we are funding all the positions in the mayors, but being subsidized by the general fund, and then a portion of the highway fund we moved to Public Works.
Okay, so 50%
Yes.
was moved. So the increase of what, 1 million represents 50% of the highway fund from the mayors?
1.9 is the exact amount.
Oh, almost 2. Okay, so
Yes.
I guess why I'm confused is because we got an overall increase, yet when you get to part 2 of this subsection J, the actual village streets and roads resurfacing and repairs amount is less than last year, meaning we're putting aside, we're allocating from the Guam Highway Fund appropriation, even though they received 2 million more, we're allocating less towards funding village streets and road resurfacing and repairs in FY22.
Senator, the amount that's reflected here in this provision is the amount that was reflected in the executive budget, if I'm not mistaken.
It's their request, that's correct.
Yes.
Even in their testimony, they say it's less than last year, however, we do have some carryover funding. But I'm not sure if they were aware that they were getting 2 million more. So where's that 2 million going? It's going towards what?
It's part of the operation, the 12 million that you see there from the Guam Highway Fund. It's
Right.
incorporated into that.
Yeah, I know it's going towards operations.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what's clear. So I'm wondering why that's not going towards roads instead of operations, if the whole point was to move it from the mayors to get the roads done. I remember during the budget hearing, they put up a slide that talked about exactly how many roads they were going to be able to get repaired in FY22 using the 2.25. And it was, it's not even one per village, that list. So, it's supposed to be, they're supposed to prioritize almost 3 per village on that list. And they can't even get to 1 per village. And I'm trying to follow up, the legislature in previous years had increased the liquid fuels tax, particularly to fund additional village streets, roads. And I'm very concerned that the money is less instead of more. And of course, at that time, an amendment failed to make that a lockbox. So it looks like that increase in taxes, if you look at this decrease this year as what's being allocated towards road repair, that the increase in taxes is not going towards the road repair, it's going towards operations, personnel, or something else. And that's my concern. When you said that it's tracking less, are you able to determine any balances in that fund carried over from prior years? Because in prior years, there were several attempts there were significant balances in those funds, and there were amendments made to put all of the balance in so that more roads could be repaired in that fiscal year. But the last correspondence I can find is 2019. I can't determine what happened with that fund.
Right now, as of the FY20 audit, I believe there's $1.2 million in the fund right now. But I also, if I'm not mistaken, there is a provision that if there was any excess revenues in the fund, would go to the flood mitigation projects.
Okay, I remember that's up in the revenue portion of the
Yes.
bill, of this bill as well. Did it go? Did it ever go there in past years? Have you seen that? Because we haven't seen that.
Yes, Senator, the only thing we're seeing in the audit basically is whatever the fund balance is, whether or not they follow through after the audit through the mechanism of moving the monies to these proper accounts as per law. I can't tell you that right now, if it was done.
All right. DPW was one of the agencies that when we asked them if they had requested for ARP funds and if they had a plan to how to spend it, they said yes. They had submitted a budget to the governor for about, I think, 30 million for equipment, buses, personnel, something about derelict buildings, bus drivers, and heavy equipment operators, and abandoned vehicles, and the coral pit, and the stormwater sewer upgrades. So that's what they said for ARP funds. I don't see roads in there. I don't think, right? I didn't say roads. So roads are not part of it. So I am just very concerned that we get all of that liquid fuel tax that, all of it has to be, all of the additional liquid fuel tax from that increase that was passed several years ago has to go towards this road repair. If we could get an accounting of that, Mr. Steve, please.
Senator Nelson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I have an amendment. It is, the file name, colleagues, is SB 55 TCN L10 P63. And this is to ensure that the money that was transferred into the Guam Highway Fund, and the 1.9, I rounded up to 2 mil, for the purpose of funding bicycle lane infrastructure and road improvements.
Mr. Chair, is this amendment?
Yes, this is an amendment that has just been proffered. Please refresh your Google Drives. And this is to page 63, line 10 of page 63. Would anyone like to speak on this amendment? Senator Blas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My understanding that part of this was to go to bicycle lanes.
Is that a question for the sponsor of the amendment?
Yes, please.
Does the sponsor yield?
Yes, the money is to ensure that when they do the road improvements, that they include bicycle lanes. So in the past years, there have been a tremendous support by the previous administration to ensure that at least the portion of our roads have painted areas that allow bicyclists to travel. Now we see that paint is faded out, and we are seeing an increase in motorist and bicyclist accidents, so cars hitting people who are biking around the island. During the pandemic, we had an increase of increase within the biking community, the bicyclist community, to include increase of purchasing of bicycles. And so now we see families taking out the youth, those that are 10 years old and below, to also that, and we see that the motorists are becoming a little bit more aggressive, as we've heard in the previous roundtable hearing last week. So I just want to ensure that when they do road improvements, they also account for bicycle lanes.
I appreciate that, Mr. Chair. I guess another question to be asked is, which roads are we talking about here? For which roads? Because it does make a difference between the roads that we are responsible for and the roads that are under federal highway.
Right, that is correct. So the roads of federal highway are already funded, and they already have, as in our roundtable hearing last week, they have already had bids and contracts that have been approved for the roads in the federal highways. And so whatever else is lacking that is not funded federally, the intent of this is going to cover those areas.
Senator Blas?
And you know, Mr. Chair, I mean, it's very hard to deny that it's a necessity, or that we would like to be able to have these on our roads. The fact of the matter is, many of these roads that are going to be repaired, first off, don't have access, don't have ability, other than for full other than you're really going to have to make some major improvements in some of these roads to be able to put the bike lanes in. Now, I'm not encouraging for an increase in the amounts that are there. It's just that it becomes very difficult. And I have to also recognize, Mr. Chair, that we're not in a position today to be able to, and granted that, yeah, it seems that the money is there, but the fact of the matter is we don't know what our economic situation will be down the road. And, you know, while we can say that this is not revenues that we need to be able to collect, but or that it's going to be burden on the taxpayers, it's revenues that we can use to be able to fill those areas where we're not going to be able to have enough money to be filled by the taxpayers, or by an economic activity and an economy that's right now we're not too sure of. I don't know whether this is going to be unprecedented or not, but if I can ask that, you know, anytime before we start to talk to enemies, I would rather that we bookmark this so that we can have a fuller discussion and recognize, first off, by the time we get to the end of this, we make sure that we've funded everything that we need to fund, and then duke it out from those areas that we would like to be able to fund. I don't want to draw opposition or say I'm opposed to this. I'm just pleading that maybe we bookmark this and we look at this at the end after we've gone through all of the agencies and all the necessities that we need to be able to fund. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Speaker Chalahi?
Thanks. If I understand the amendment correctly, it's just an allocation. So it's not actually restructuring much in the bill. I mean, any other appropriations. It's taking the 2 million that was added to this budget this year and allocating it for these purposes, which include road improvements. Maybe instead of a number 2 there, it should be another number. There's a 2 here and a 3, and so maybe this would be a 4 or a new 3. But anyways, renumbered. And then I think it would be very clear. So this is just an allocation of this money in addition to the 2.250 that's already been allocated in subsection 2. So that would be a total clear mandatory allocation of 4.250, right, million, particularly from the Guam Highway Fund for village streets, bicycle lanes, and road improvements. I would make an amendment to this just to make it consistent. We're talking about village streets and roads, I hope, and to put, instead of road improvements, to put village streets and roads resurfacing and repairs, just as it is in subsections 2 and 3, so that we're talking about the same thing, the same roads, right? The village street roads. Yeah. Yeah, so I was suggesting an amendment that instead of the word road improvements at the end of your amendment, that we change that to read village streets and roads resurfacing and repairs, so that it's exactly consistent with subsection 2 and subsection 3 in the bill, and the purposes of the additional liquid fuels tax, that it's supposed to go towards village streets, roads resurfacing and repair.
Okay, Madam Speaker, you're proffering an amendment.
Yes, to change the word road improvements to village streets and roads resurfacing and repairs.
So you're proffering an amendment to change the word, to strike out the words road improvements
Yes.
and replace them with village streets. And I'm sorry, what was the village streets? and
Village
what?
streets and roads resurfacing and repair, just like it reads in subsection 2 and subsection 3. Village streets
Okay.
and roads resurfacing and repairs.
Mr. Chair, well, I just want to
Senator
make sure.
Tideway, yes.
Yeah, page 63, line 10, correct? Line 10?
Yes.
This is an incorporation right below, right above the summary of appropriation funding source. We're incorporating this particular
Point of order,
section.
Mr. Chair.
No.
Point of
Senator
order.
Nelson?
I'm just asking a question right now,
Yes,
and I
point of
appreciate
order,
it
Mr.
be
Chair,
answered where
because
we're
I
at.
believe we're talking about the amendment to the amendment, and you haven't even finished saying what the amendment to the amendment is. I'm writing it down,
Yes.
so please make it clear for everyone, and then
Okay,
move
Senator Nelson,
forward.
one moment. We are on an amendment to the amendment. The original amendment is to line 10, page 63.
Oh.
So now on the amendment to the amendment, is there any discussion on Senator Talahi's amendment?
Please restate the amendment, Mr. Chair.
Senator Talahi's amendment is to strike out the word road improvements and replace it with village streets and roads resurfacing and repairs. Anyone on the Talahi amendment?
Mr.
Senator
Chair,
Torres.
I'd like to have this in writing. That's not just striking out one word. We're incorporating almost a whole new sentence.
Okay,
Madam
we will
Chair.
take a
Thank
moment's
you.
recess
Yes.
to get it in writing.
Thank you.
We're back from recess. Senator Nelson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, if you could please refresh your Google Drive. If you could refresh it. So I'm withdrawing the original amendment, and I'd like to submit this new amendment. And the file name is TCN L16 P63 parentheses 4. Refresh your Google Drive. The title is TCN L16 P63 parentheses 4. You're welcome. So we went ahead and corrected some technical issues. And so now it's still for the same purpose of bicycle lane infrastructure to include village streets and roads resurfacing and repairs, and moving it down to section 4.
Sorry, Senator Nelson, before you continue, can we dispense first with the original motion to withdraw the original
okay.
amendment? And then we can proceed with the rest of it. So there has been a motion for Senator Nelson to withdraw her original amendment. Any objections to the motion? Seeing none, motion carries. Senator Nelson, now on the new amendment you're proffering.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the new amendment is in TCN line 16P63. And we included the words village streets and road resurfacing and repairs to include from subsection J1. That is all, Mr. Chair.
Senator Blas, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really don't have any objection to the amendment, but isn't the whole purpose for the highway fund to resurface and repair village streets and roads?
Is that for a question is that a question, Mr. Chair?
Yes, are you posing that question to the author?
Yes,
Or is it
please.
rhetorical?
Does the author yield?
Yes, and there was concern, right, earlier that there was a discussion about transferring money from the mayors to DPW, and so we're ensuring that this additional $2 million is going for that purpose, that allocation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anyone else on the amendment? Senator Titleaway, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for changing it down, moving it down from line 10 and going now to line 16 under, it says page 63, line 16, correct, Mr. Chair? That is what we're looking at here.
Yes, the
Yeah.
new amendment
So-
is line 16. We're still on page
Okay,
63.
So why would it be numbered 4? Wouldn't it be actually number 2, and then after that would be the village street road resurfacing repair would be 3, and then 4 would be additional street roads? Wouldn't that be the right numbering? Can we check with
This
the
amendment
clerk?
also allows legal to make technical changes and to renumber the sections.
Okay, but that's number 4. Is she changing that number 4 to number
Right.
2, and then make those technical corrections? Because
Yes,
why would
the-
it be 4 unless the intent is to put number
Yes.
4?
Senator Titleaway, the amendment allows them to renumber the sections accordingly and for legal to make technical changes, so that would correct any problem. If there's a problem with numbering and the amendment passes, legal is allowed to renumber the sections and make technical changes.
I understand that, Mr. Chair, but if we're making amendment and it starts with number 4, that's the amendment. The point is, if number 4 is the amendment, then this section would be placed on page 64, not 63. It says number 4. Is it the intent to make this number 4? Mr. Chair, if you have 1 second,
Yes.
please. 1 second, like everyone else gets a chance. Let me have
Is
1
that
second.
is that a question?
Can I have 1 second,
Are you asking for a
please?
moment's recess?
One-
Moment's recess. right, we're back. Senator Titagui, you're recognized. Do you have an amendment to the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, the amendment says beginning on line 16. It should begin on line 26. That's all.
26 or 27?
That would be, you're right. Actually, it would start at line 27.
Thank you. There's an amendment to the amendment to change line 16 to line 27. Any objections to the amendment? No objections. Motion carries. We're now on the original amendment. Anyone else on the original amendment? Senator Speaker Talahi, you're recognized.
Thank you. Yes, I appreciate this amendment that puts even more money than the 2.2 already allocated. This will allocate an additional $2 million towards village streets and roads resurfacing and repair and bicycle lanes along those roads as well. As we said earlier, the entire additional liquid fuels tax that was increased several years ago is supposed to be going towards village streets and road resurfacing repairs. And since that tax was passed, they kept providing lists of at least three projects per village that this was going to be able to fund, or that's the list that they were trying to shave down. They were trying to complete. It was taking years and years and years, and that was the whole rationale behind that liquid fuels tax increase. The problem is that, even with the liquid fuels tax increase, the projects on the list are still, it seems, I know they're working very hard, but it's still taking a very long time to get the projects off that list, or, to get enough projects done, I guess, that we're going to actually complete the list while we're in office. So, I support the amendment. All the money that can go towards this, the better. DPW explained to us that, yes, they prepare the roads, but really a lot of this is contingent on contracting with only one company on Guam to resurface these roads or to lay down the asphalt. And they wait, or they have to queue up for, all the projects that one company has lined up, with military projects, private contracts, and then the government contracts. So we're kind of in a jam here, but I say put the money there and hopefully get the projects done. I did have a concern, though, if I could just bring it up right now. OFB, you said earlier that the balance in the Guam Highway Fund is $1.2 million. And that in subsection 3, we are allocating that balance towards additional village streets and roads repairs. Is that correct? That's a September 21 balance. The upcoming audit balance will be also allocated to road repairs.
Yeah, our intent, Senator, was to take the fund balance as of September 20th of this.
Okay. And your estimate, hopefully 1.8 million, an additional list of projects can come out with that. Can you just justify that in comparison to that provision we talked about earlier that comes in the revenue section of the bill, where it looks like it takes the balance of the entire highway fund, revenues that come in excess of appropriations, that is going to go towards flooding. Is that different or the same money?
It could be different, Senator, simply because we're talking about anything in excess. We're not talking about what's being appropriated and what's being projected. It's anything in excess. That's the one we're identifying to go to the flood mitigation.
Okay, so is that different than the fund balance?
That's correct.
Okay, so has any money gone to the flood mitigation?
Again, Senator, I wish I could answer that question. I don't know. We can look into AS400, but right now I don't even know what account to look for the flood mitigation project.
Okay, so we don't know. Okay, I just like to put that on the record, if you could follow up with that later on. And then for this fund, where we're taking the balance of, I think I'm the one who put this in 2018 for the 2018 balance. That's how long we've been trying to do this, because of that increase in liquid fuels tax. We're trying to capture it, right? Can you tell whether any of that additional balance from the Guam Highway Fund since 2018 has been used or, transferred to DPW and able to be used for these projects?
The only thing I identify, Senator, is that whatever the fund balance is as of September 30th, 2020, is the fund balance from previous years. How much of that money was maybe transferred to Public Works? That I cannot tell you.
Does it require a transfer, or are they able to use it?
I would think it would probably be, they would be able to use it. I'm not too sure what the mechanism is internally to do that, but because the law allows them to use the excess, I'm sure they can.
All right, okay, appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, OFB.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Anyone else on this amendment? Senator Torres, you're recognized.
I have a question for OFB. Essentially, what we're doing is we're carving out $2 million from the operations budget for the Department of Public Works in fiscal year 21. And that, I think, is reason for us to be concerned, because we're at a time when we're arguing about, or we're making assumptions that although we're tracking, we have a very precarious economic outlook. And at the very least, operations should be secured. I know that that's always been a priority of OFB in every budget cycle, versus to at least maintain operations by funding warm bodies, for example, as opposed to other ancillary projects. So I just wanted to confirm, this amendment in essence takes $2 million away from Public Works' operational budget. What would the impact be to them, just from what you can assess?
Yeah, if you think about it this way, Senator, this $1.9 million, $2 million is in addition to what they already had in FY21. So it's not, I won't say it was part of the operation because they never had it originally in 21, but in FY22, we are giving them an additional $1.9 million from the Highway Fund. So whatever they choose to utilize that $1.9 million, that's really up to their discretion at this point.
But my point is that we are taking it from a category that is comprised of different funding sources. It's comprised, 12 million is from the Guam Highway Fund, 6,800,000 from the Guam Educational Facilities Fund, for example. And so my point being that you're saying that it won't have an impact on operations, because I'm just reading it from its face value that it is for operations.
No, what I'm saying is it wasn't part of the original request when they submitted into OFB. The additional 1.9 is we added it on to their request.
Okay, thank you. Then that's a different representation.
Okay.
Thank you for the clarification.
All right.
Thank you, Senator Torres. Anyone else on the amendment? If not, Senator Nelson, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this money is to ensure that we are prioritizing exactly what our liquid fuel tax was increased for. It was an unpopular legislation. However, if we can show something tangible to our community that their tax dollars are going used to the purposes that we set it out in statute to do, then it's the wise thing to do today. So I humbly ask your support.
Thank you, Senator Nelson. Any objections to the amendment? Seeing none, motion carries. We'll take a moment's recess. We are back from recess. At this time, I will recognize Senator San Augustine for an amendment he has to page 63.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My amendment is listed as SB 55JSSA L27 P63. And the amendment is to add number 5, to add 5 to the subsection of J of Section 1, Chapter 5 of the bill to read, number 5, continuing appropriation authorization. Notwithstanding any other provision of law, the allotted but unexpended balance of funds appropriated from the general fund to the Department of Public Works for fiscal year 2021 shall not lapse and shall continue to be available until fully expended. And I know that some of my colleagues may ask me the question, what are they going to use the funds for? As communicated with the director of DPW, and I've asked him about his prior year personnel obligation, he advised me that if we can get the rollover, he will focus every penny there to cover and pay as much of the personnel obligation they have in that department. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator San Augustine. Anyone on the amendment? Would anyone like to speak to the amendment? If not, I'm sorry. This amendment is to line 27, page 63. It's to add 5 to subsection J of section 1.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Senator Shelton,
Thank
you may
you.
proceed.
Thank you very much. And as the author stated, this continuing appropriation authorization will be used for the payment of prior year obligations, specifically for overtime, I think, that's owed from many years past. It's something that we've asked of the director in previous budget hearings, not just this round, but in previous years, and it's an obligation that we definitely want to take care of. And I'd like to ensure in this amendment that we explicitly say that it will be used for prior year obligations for the purposes of overtime. So if I can have a moment to make an amendment to the amendment.
One moment. I'll recognize Senator San Augustine.
I didn't catch exactly what Senator Amanda mentioned, but I need to amend my amendment. So if we can do a recess so we can change it, because it's not from general fund, it's from 2 other different funds to lapse over. All right?
No problem, Senator San Augustine. We'll take a moment's recess while some corrections are made to the amendment.
The Committee of the Whole is back from recess. Senator San Augustine, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'd like to withdraw my amendment, and then I'll be proffering a revised amendment.
On the motion to withdraw the amendment, are there any objections? Motion withdrawn. You may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is listed as SB 55J L27P 63, number 5. It's to add section 5 to subsection J, section 1, chapter 5 of the bill to read, continuing appropriation authorization. Notwithstanding any other provisions of law, the unexpended balance of funds appropriate in 1 of subsection J of section 1, chapter 5 of public law 35-99 shall not lapse and shall continue to be available until fully expended for the costs associated with prior year personnel obligation. And Madam Chair, I'd like to thank my co-sponsors, yourself and Senator Talina Nelson for their recommendation, and that's why the amendment was made, to make sure that it completes that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator San Augustine. Anyone wishing to speak on the amendment? On the amendment? Speaker Terlahi, you're recognized.
Could you clarify what this is for again, please?
Do you yield to the question?
Yes. Madam Chair, it's specifically for personnel, prior year personnel obligation, and it's only to use FY21's funds to roll over, such as overtime and anything else that's related to personnel.
This is a, sorry, I don't have it in front of me. Just the amendment is to carry over from FY21 lapses? Is that
That's
right?
correct.
Okay.
As requested by the director, so he can pay off the personnel obligations that are due to the employees.
I don't have any objection to paying this. Is this under a lawsuit or not?
Not yet.
Is this, because I don't see it in the director's testimony either, indicating that he had this prior year obligation when he came in for his budget hearing. And I'm curious, he specifically said he wants to use carryover funding for additional streets. So that's why the appropriation for streets was, less than what they might have needed, because he was counting on additional funding. And I guess I want to make clear now, if he's going to have less for the streets, if this obligation has to be paid first.
Is that a question to the author?
Or OFB, whoever has the answer, yes.
If you're asking what the total outstanding obligations are for personnel, which this would, I believe this is the amendment it's going to cover. Yeah. In DPW's budget for FY22, they put prior obligations at a total of $1.1 million for personnel costs.
Have they expended all their funds this year?
I would have to check the AS400, Senator, to find out how much of the appropriation of FY21 is still available and what the available balance is.
Why are they not paying these if these are prior year obligations? These are not FY21 obligations.
Senator, like we put in there is a provision in the current budget right now that authorizes departments and agencies to pay prior year obligations. Now, it's hopefully my best guess that by the end of the year they would address some of these outstanding prior obligations. But I can tell you now that these prior year obligations have been reoccurring and been rolling over year after year. And why they can't seem to liquidate them, I'm not at liberty to say, but I agree with you. These things should be already addressed if you're given the authority to pay them in the fiscal year that you're given that authority to.
Yes, and did they bring this to your attention during the budget hearing?
Senator, it's part of their budget. It's in their budget request. The outstanding prior years in the budget
So
request.
it's included already?
Pardon?
It's already included then in the money that you've given them?
Yeah. It's not part of, technically, it's not part of the appropriation, Senator. It was just additional information they provided us in the budget.
But it was part of their request.
Yes.
It's included in, when they requested this amount, we're giving them $1 million more than in FY21. And when they requested this amount, they said they could live with it. It included to pay off the obligation.
I don't know whether or not that was their intent when they made that statement, but it was reflected in their budget. Normally, these type of expenses, Senator, we don't include it in an annual budget if it's a prior year obligation. We normally look at it as, it's an outstanding obligation. We hope that through provisions that we allowed the last couple of years to give them the authority to pay off and liquidate these obligations, we don't normally necessarily put it in the current annual budget request appropriation.
Right, that's why I'm asking the questions. It's because if they had that authority, they didn't take care of the obligation, then they came in and they said, if you give us this much money, we will take care of the obligation. And then they said, we're going to, we're shorting the village streets funds, which this taxes are being taxed for that purpose, that they're going to use that carryover funding for that, seemingly as if they had taken care of these prior year obligations. I'm just trying to make that very clear. So I don't remember the director, it's not in his letter at all during the testimony. I don't remember him talking about prior year obligations. He might have answered a question in that regard. I don't have notes, but yeah, I just want to make clear whether he's counting on prior year lapses or FY21 lapses now to cover prior year obligations, or is he counting on those to cover the shortage in the village streets funds?
Yes, Senator, last year and this year, there is a provision in the budget that allows these departments and agencies to liquidate prior year obligations should they have sufficient funding in their budget. I believe last year, when I look at the financial audit, many of these departments actually surplused. In other words, did not fully expend up to the level of appropriation. So that could have been, an opportunity then to liquidate at least some, if not all, these obligations. Why they choose not to do it and why these obligations are still there, that I cannot answer.
All right, then just one more question. Are these FY21 or FY20, or which year obligations are these?
We have some costs, like, for example, in the merit bonus, since 2013, the FY21 is still outstanding. We have the Competitive Wage Act that is still due employees that are still pending payment. So there's various multiple reasons why these billings are accumulating year after year, simply because either the law has already implemented these certain actions for pay raises, and for some odd reason, they just feel that they don't have the funding for it, so therefore they're not implementing it. But these are already obligations because they're carrying it on their books.
The Wage Act, you're saying they're not giving the appropriate amount of wages? That doesn't make sense.
I recall, Senator, last year we provided in the budget a provision, for example, in certain departments, I believe a couple of like the Bureau of Budget and other agencies that were still due wage competitive retro payments to many of its employees. And through the provision that we provided last year, there were some departments that actually paid these competitive wage act adjustments going back.
Are you talking about merit bonuses that were put on hold, and because some agencies paid, now all agencies are going to go back and pay? Is that what we're talking about? Or you're talking about they deliberately did not pay what they were supposed to pay these employees?
they are listing it down as a prior year obligation. So I'm assuming at this point that it was implemented, but was never paid out. Because if it wasn't implemented and it's not considered a prior year obligation, then to me it's something that they didn't implement. But since they're listing it as a prior year obligation, I'm assuming it was implemented, but just not paid. Portion also of this outstanding obligations is the 2014 appeals process. So that, I believe, is still pending.
So certain cases where they were appealed. Now, that makes sense.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, well, they didn't make specific as to what the prior year obligations, they just listed down as prior year obligation outstanding payments.
1.1 million.
Yes,
All right,
ma'am.
thank you.
Senator Stogstein?
Madam Chair, I'd like to just remind us all, that, or actually the speaker, there was a letter addressed to you on July 30th, 2021, from the Department of Public Works. And they listed that subject fiscal year 2021, third quarter prior year obligation unpaid. And if you look at the letter, it came from the director. It totaled exactly what we're talking about. So it was addressed in their letter to the speaker, to your office, ma'am. And I understand there's a lot of letters. You and I both receive a lot. So, but this is what this amendment was for. It's just to ask that it roll over, and it came up to 1.1. If I go into details, it came up to grand total prior year obligation general fund 158,000, goes all the way down, and it total 1,110,589.96. Gives you the total amount, and that's what they're asking for, is that if we roll this over, they'll be able to liquidate that, and it's gone. And then I hope it's gone. That's all we can do, is that it's all gone and nothing else haunts us as we go through the year. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. My only concern, and I have no objection to this amendment, my only concern is that we keep saying we're going to be using, the liquid fuels tax to fund roads, and it looks like it's getting diverted. That's all. I would hope that we, are able to make it through some other funding source. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak on the amendment? On the amendment. Are there any objections to the amendment? No objections. Amendment passes.
All right, my colleagues, I think that pretty much wraps up with DPW. And we don't see any other amendments. Madam Speaker, do you have an amendment you wanted to bring up?
No, I'd like to just clarify. So I'm reading the letter, the details. So part of it is for unpaid overtime. And part of it says it's for, let me just see. Appeals, that's fine, 2014 appeals. But this part about the merit bonus awards, can you just give us an idea of, what happened to the agencies across the board on these merit bonus awards? These are were these put on hold? Is this the way the other agencies are being treated as well? Are they all going to be compensated now for any merit bonuses that were put on hold in the past?
All right, we'll have the OFB answer that. Senator Guerrero?
Yes, Senator. As far as the merit bonus is concerned, it's already in law. The merit bonuses are supposed to be given out. But I believe also the merit bonuses a lot of them are subject to the availability of funds to pay these merit bonuses. And if the merit bonuses are not part of the appropriation for the agencies, I believe the agencies are just suspending the implementation of paying out these merit bonuses. And that's the only thing I can surmise as to why there's agencies. I've been told that there's agencies out there that want to implement the merit bonus, but simply because of the funding issue, they have not done so.
Yeah, so you're saying that some agencies are and some agencies are not?
No, I'm not saying that some agencies are. I'm just saying if they're listing it down as an outstanding obligation, then I would assume they are implementing it, but not paying it. Because I would question if you're not implementing it, how could it be a prior year obligation?
When we are told that we are covering, personnel, aren't we covering, their benefits, their merit bonuses, and every obligation that we have? It's just troubling because, they submitted a budget, they came through the budget hearing, they didn't talk about this as far as I can remember, it's not in their testimony, and then to submit something that says for all these years we have all these unpaid obligations towards employees. I don't get how they were able to get away with that, and I don't get how we didn't catch it if you're telling us every year that we're funding these employees, especially merit bonuses. That one is that's always the explanation as to why the budgets are increased every year. Oh, because we're covering increments and we're covering merit bonuses.
The only thing, Senator, that I know for sure that we cover aside from base salary in the budget is increments. And maybe, the other type of incidents like night differential, hazardous pay, stuff like that. But I have not seen in the budget any money setting aside for merit bonuses.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We will now close out unless we have no other items on Public Works. So Public Works is now closed out. We will now move to page 64, what happens to be Guam Contractors License Board. We do not have any amendments. We will now close that section. That's page 64. We'll now move to the Guam Board of Registration and Appeals Board. There's no amendments there. We'll close that section out. That's page 65. We're now at the Guam Police Department, page 66. I don't see any amendments. Do we have any amendments? No amendments for the Police Department. Senator Tello, do you have an amendment or are you proffering one?
No, Mr. Chair. I have a question to ask for OFB. I've noticed that the Guam Police Department has been given less in the general fund of a 1.529954 of the general fund compared to FY21. Of course, it was increased on the Guam Highway Fund to about $2.7 million increase, but it's a total of GPD receiving less, only about 206,103 in total compared to FY21. But my question here is, there's been an increase in the federal matching grant to about 1.7 million, 222 increase in the federal matching grant. So I was just wondering, last year was only 700 in FY21 for federal matching grant. Right now we have 2.42619, which is a difference, an increase of 1.7 plus. So I just wanted to find out and clarify why this huge increase.
If you're referring to the federal match, Senator, that amount is what's reflected in the executive budget. So I believe they're anticipating to get either additional funds or a new grant in federal dollars.
From what? What was the increase for?
For federal programs.
For federal programs?
Yes. Because the increase is in the federal match.
What federal programs are there?
I believe there's recreational boating safety is one. And let's see. No, sure what's the increase in federal programs. I believe it's recreational boating safety. The other one is the COPS program. So those two programs receive federal dollars.
Does that answer your question, Senator Tello?
Okay. I've also noticed there's been about $144,000 less given to the Safe Schools Initiative. Last year it was 285,170. This year it's only 142,585. That's less 144,000. Can you explain why this decrease?
The decrease, Senator, is to reflect what's the governor put in the executive budget for Guam Police Department.
Okay.
So that is the level that is requested in the executive budget.
Okay, that's what but when we had the budget hearing for GPD, did they say anything about that they didn't need that same appropriation like they received in FY21?
I don't recall them specifically saying anything regarding the funding for this, for the safe school, whether or not it is increase or decrease or inadequate. But, like I said, the amount that's reflected is what was requested in the executive budget, so we just went ahead and used that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Senator Tello. We were with the police department. There are no amendments for page 66 and 67. That agency budget is closed. We are now at the Department of Corrections. Yes. What do you want to book? You want to book GPD? Okay. Are there any objections to bookmarking? There being none, it's bookmarked. We are now on page 68, Department of Correction. There are no amendments. We will now proceed to close Department of Correction. We're now at Department of Agriculture. Yes, ma'am, Madam Speaker.
Yes, I just want to know if there are any other prior year obligations for compensation for personnel that have been
Are you referring to which agency?
GPD, DOC, whether they've been requested and whether they are covered in these budgets.
Did you get a letter? Because I didn't receive a letter, but I didn't get notice from Public Works now.
It seems
Mr.
like
Steve,
they're
do you have
sending us
something?
letters telling us they have obligation, but they're not including it in their budget requests. Is that how you're reading this? What is up with that?
Senator, again, the prior years is something I'm sure they know about even before the development of the executive budget. Now, why it's not included in the executive budget, I can't answer that. But when you give them the opportunity to come down here through our budget hearings and sessions, and we tell them, what is exactly what you need, they tell us. And, aside from, the ceilings that the governor has already set for these departments and agencies, when they tell us, that they need $1 million more, I mean, that $1 million has to come from somewhere. And that's what makes it so frustrating. So I don't know why we always find out after the executive budgets are submitted that these departments have outstanding obligations, and they run in the millions.
That's my concern. So did GPD get their merit bonuses?
Yeah, and if you look in the budget call that's sent out, I believe by BBMR, there is a form in there that shows prior year obligations. And I believe in those forms, they're supposed to list those prior obligations. But your question as regarding prior year obligations for Guam Police, there is an amount of $479,956 that they owe. For Department of Corrections, there's $5,331,000 they have prior year obligations. And that's what they're telling us.
GPD?
GPD is...
Sorry, who was that you just read?
Okay, GPD is 479,956. For DOC, it's $5,331,614.
Oh, my goodness. All right, so for example, DOC, we're giving them less this year than we gave them last year, and they still have a $5 million prior year obligations.
Well, Steve, can you answer that? They mentioned there's a $5 million. We're at DOC at this point, but I know that the speaker's asking a general question to cover both law enforcement agencies. Yes, yes, Senator Nelson?
Is the speaker done speaking? Okay. Just to clarify, I thought we wrote a provision in the 34th legislature that ensured that because of that lawsuit, that the DOC officers were paid. Were they not paid from that provision in the Budget Act of the 34th legislature?
I will need to verify, Senator, whether or not that particular obligation was paid, but I do know they still have outstanding obligations. I mean, I don't think it's years, but I think for this year, it's still several months out that they still owe.
And then if they have overtime work because of the COVID impact, did the administration not cover them on the CARES Act?
That, Senator, I cannot answer that question.
I think one of the things so note is that as the agencies show up, they tell us what they need. When they didn't object to their budget, like Public Works, they tell us exactly what they're asking for. And we did not get any requests from GPD or DOC saying, can we roll over to pay? So we're just leaving that alone unless they ask.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, can you please verify? Because, you know, at the last minute, when we started the session, we started receiving an influx of letters requesting additional stuff from, oh, I forgot this, from the agency. So I share the same concern as the speaker, but if we can verify if they were even paid in that provision, at least for the DOC officers, because they were supposed to get paid that money from their lawsuit.
From what we gather, Senator, the 513 right now that I reference is mainly only for contracts and invoices. It does not include personnel costs.
The $5 million that's pending is for contracts. Is that what you're saying?
Contracts and invoices still outstanding.
Wow. Was any of those contracts and invoices relative to the pandemic as an extra expense?
That, Senator, I don't have a detailed listing, just the total amount and comprise of what that amount comprised of was just contracts and invoices. I will see, I'll see what I can do to get as detailed as possible what this 5.3 is.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, if you like, we can bookmark this and we'll try to get the information, but we will take a recess for 15 minutes. The system has to reset and then we can get back on before it turns off on us. All right? So we'll recess at this point and we'll try to get that information you're asking for, Speaker and Senator Nelson.